Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Genuine Life podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Nicole, and you know I'm already super excited to be here with you. I'm laughing because I'm thinking about all of those threatening and evil, angry text messages and DMs that I received from those of you who were missing your episode last week. And so that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Wanted to have a really transparent conversation with you, and one that I think is going to be very important, especially with this being Mental Health Awareness Month. And so I want to take things back a little bit here before we kind of jump into the meat of the podcast. But for those of you who don't know or who are aware, I used to be with someone who battled with their sexuality and causing us both to live, in a way that we weren't living our best, most genuine lives, right? And so while there were many other factors involved, you can imagine the mental and the emotional anguish as a woman being linked to a man that is not attracted to you or who wants you. And this was the first time that I can remember being introduced to crazy levels of anxiety and spells of depression. It really came out during this time. I had the high school, middle school kind of anxiety of, the immature stuff where you're like, oh my God, do people like me and all that stuff. And you kind of manage it. But I think this was the first time in my life that I had been confronted with it in a way that I could not manage it. And so I was like going to therapy, and it was just a really tough thing to work through, coming out of this life of this need for validation and trying to prove that I'm good enough and all of these things that I had to work through. And so it's this reason that drives me in everything that I speak about and everything that I do. And I try to bring value to whatever it is that I'm doing and tackling, and to remind anyone that is within 3 feet of me, and of course through this podcast, as far as it will reach, that they are valuable and that your life is valuable. When you're living your life genuinely and you're liberated from the need of validation, you are free. You already are valuable. And I think that that is where my message through this podcast comes in. And while I'm much better than I was before, and while I understand my triggers, there are times when depression and anxiety will pop up from behind the walls that I have kind of set up to protect myself in the form of boundaries. And if I'm not careful, they will peep from behind those walls, and that's exactly what happened. So now let me say it is 10 times easier, because I know you're probably wondering, well, even though she didn't post a podcast episode, I was on her Instagram and she was still posting in her stories. Yes, I was. Because it is 10 times easier for me to encourage other people. And I'm sure you can say the same, I find joy when I do that. And it's what I consider to be my purpose. But if I'm not feeding myself, I don't have overflow. And a really good friend of mine said that to me, that this podcast is a reflection of my overflow. So if I am not feeling anything, if my soul is not being fulfilled, I don't have anything to give, and it'll leave me empty. And that's exactly where I found myself last week. So I, prefer to record my episodes in real time, meaning, I'll go through the whole week. I'll kind of take notes of things that I see or hear, and then it becomes a podcast episode that will air that following Monday, unless it's an interview. But I was so overwhelmed last week with a multitude of things. By the end of the week, I just had nothing to give. I was overwhelmed with the continued unnecessary murders of people of color. And, while I was so angry and I wanted to find a very good way to get it out and express myself, I became really overwhelmed with this sad feeling of hopelessness and questioning whether or not justice will really be served. We've seen this so many times, And then there have been more stories that have come out since Ahmaud Arbery, and I am almost positive there will be even more. And I think the sad truth is I have become so hopeless in expecting justice to be served. And I think that hopelessness made me really sad. So that definitely started the ball rolling. I wasn't careful with what I was watching, and I did watch the video. And so that kept replaying in my head. And then I would go to Facebook and I would see people really trying to justify his death. And so that became overwhelming to me because I could not understand the why behind that. And for those of you who don't know, I go down a rabbit hole with my thoughts. I will just keep replaying things and keep trying to understand all points of views. And I just couldn't for the life of me obviously understand why anybody would argue this, but at the same time I couldn't stop my brain from replaying it. You know, my move is at the top of my mind. It's coming up really, really quick. And I think, I've shared this with you all, that this is a financed move, because it was a voluntary reload. And so I have to be very, very smart with my funds, because the point of moving, I had mentioned in my episode Changes that, I'm not trying to move and then struggle because I had to dish out all this money for this and dish out money for that, and then I got to pay for this. The point is to move and be greater than when I was here. And so just being really smart with my finances and the move and trying to figure out ways to be creative. And that is at the top of my brain. Then I go to run an errand back in April. And mind you, my car hasn't been driven since March. And so I go to sit down. I had Puffy with me. We're getting ready to ride out in Seattle and my car doesn't start. And so that became like a whole nother layer because the car shipping company will charge extra if your car is not working. And so that was like another bill that I hadn't anticipated. Thankfully I'm up and running, but I'm nervous about flying with Puffy. If you know him, he's super, super sweet, but he's not socialized. And so if you've seen him in public, he gets very, very excited around people. And that's at the top of my brain. Like, will this anxiety medication really have this dog doped up enough that we can survive a 5-hour flight? I don't know. So like that's at the top of my mind. Work is as busy as ever. There are expectations that have to be met, numbers that have to be met. But I mentally am in a place where I also have other things outside of Amazon that I have to focus on as well. And so it's that fine balance of still being a model employee, and coupled with still feeding myself things that I need during my downtime. My mom is a nurse and she's on the front lines. She's considered an essential worker. And so, COVID is very real. And so I worry about her every day and what's going on. And I'm super far. So the only news I get is through whatever she tells me over the phone. And so, that was at the top of my brain. And then this desire all of a sudden, well, I wouldn't say all of a sudden, I've always had it, but like it really amplified itself that this particular week of wanting way more out of my life and feeling anxious that I was not doing enough to get to where I want to be. So that pressure came out of nowhere. And then I ordered groceries through Instacart, and I've been doing this now for almost 2 years, have never had an issue with anyone finding where I live. And it was like the first time, mind you, like all of this happened in that particular week, these thoughts and these feelings. And I ordered these groceries, and for the first time, this person got lost, which I wasn't upset about, but it was just really weird because this has never happened to me before. And then on top of that, he gets to the house and I grab my groceries, I come upstairs. I don't know if I checked that I wanted 4 boxes of Cheez-its or I don't know, but I ended up with 4 boxes of Cheez-its. And I'm like, why did he message me? Like, do people really order 4 boxes that he would think this was normal? But then I'm like, well, he doesn't know me, so whatever. So yeah, I got 4 boxes of Cheez-its. And I'm just like, I need a break. And so that Sunday, I literally took a personal day from work, I just had nothing left. I had nothing left. I could not even, it was to the point where I was like trying to pull whatever I could to encourage myself. And I just needed a break. So I took that Monday off. I spent the entire day doing me, and it was the best thing ever. And so I wanted to come on here today. One, to like I said, just be very transparent with you. I wanted you to know that, as super, super positive and ooey gooey as I try to be, there are days when I just don't have it to give. And while I consider this a purpose and a gift that I freely love to give to others, I do recognize that I have to make sure that I am well in order for me to try to encourage others. And if I am constantly pushing the message of being genuine, living our best lives, I have to make sure that I'm doing the same thing. And so I just decided to take a break because I did not want to come on here and pretend that all was well and that, kind of lie my way through a podcast episode to make sure that you were encouraged. But in a weird way, I feel like me coming on here telling you that I don't have it all together and that I do worry about things and being genuine in that way can still encourage you so that you understand that no matter what is going on, no matter what you're facing, you can get through it. And so I wanted to pull just some things that, I pulled from my past, and that obviously I pulled just from the last week alone, and just share these things with you that I took away. And hopefully in a weird way, some of them may be a repeat. It might be a nice refresher. And for some, it could be like an aha moment. But I definitely wanted to take advantage of the fact that I can share them with you. And so, number one, there is nothing about you to be ashamed of. Okay? Not your past, not your present, and certainly not your future. I would have never thought I would have shared. I mean, there are a few people who know my story, but like, what? I just said it on a podcast. There were times where I was really embarrassed to say anything about my past. But I've come to a place now where I understand that that was literally a drop in my entire story, but is a part of the story that I can share with others that will help not only women, but anyone linked in a relationship that is not bringing out the very best in you, where you can feel liberated to be yourself. I think is super important for me to shed light on that, right? Like, you cannot be linked with someone and I don't care who you are or who you love, if you are not living your best life in the most genuine way, then you are with the wrong person. And you have to do what's best for you, right? And so it's never too late to pivot. It's never too late to change your plans or make strategic moves, even in the midst of a pandemic. So if you are currently, at a job where you're just like, this is not it, I made sure I put strategic in there. You don't want to be crazy, right? But start to formulate an exit plan. Still doing your work, but formulate your exit plan. If you're with someone that you feel in your gut, you're like, I'm not sure about this. This isn't it. Begin to honor those feelings. Those gut feelings is your soul speaking to you, right? You are your best advocate. Your intuition doesn't lie. Start to follow that. Okay? Number two, seek help and use every single resource available to you. And, May, as I mentioned, is Mental Health Awareness Month. And during my darkest time, which, I alluded to in the beginning of this podcast, I sought therapy. And it was great. And now that through therapy, I understand my triggers and I understand the things that I need to do, I'm able to manage them and take the time that I need. Or when it gets to a point where I can't, I seek therapy. When I first moved to Seattle, it was overwhelming. Completely took advantage of the fact that I, had moved before, and I'm like, this will be fine. But this was the first time I had been so far from family and, just feeling a little isolated. And so immediately, took up those 5 little free sessions and sought a therapist, because sometimes you just need someone outside of your circle to give you some advice. So Seek professional help. Tap into your job's resources. Many of them are offering free sessions now. There are also virtual counseling sessions being offered, but also don't fully pull on that friend that doesn't mind opening their ear or their hearts to hearing you speak and sharing your thoughts. So understand that it doesn't have to be anything that you need to be ashamed of. And really take advantage of self-care. We see this all the time: self-care Sunday, self-care Saturday. Oh, it's a self-care day. And we kind of toss the word around gingerly, but I encourage you to take full advantage of it. Understand what the meaning self-care means to you. It doesn't have to look like what you see on social media, right? And the cute towel with the hair wrapped up in a nice cozy robe, sitting on the edge of a beautiful couch painting their toes may not look like self-care to you, right? Self-care for me sometimes is just sitting in front of the TV and watching old episodes of my favorite TV show from back in the day. It could mean taking an extra long walk with your dog. It could mean pulling the book, and dusting the dust off a book cover of a book that you've been wanting to read for months and sitting by the window or sitting outside. Or it could mean hopping on the phone with a friend and chatting and laughing about absolutely goofy stuff. Do whatever feels good to you and brings life back into whatever it is that you feel like you're missing. So understanding self-care and seeking help. Next, I would encourage you to evaluate what you deem to be successful during this pandemic and be okay with that. So there have been a few memes and things kind of toward the beginning of this whole thing where it was like, if, we have the time, if you don't take advantage of this time, you did this wrong. And at first I was like, yeah, I agree. Like, I got to take full advantage of this pandemic and I have so much time now. And I am just going to tell you that is not 100% true. And I say it's not 100% true because for some it may be. Like for me, it clicked, right? It was like, yeah, you know what, Jennifer? You're always complaining about not having enough time. You've always complained about this, that, and the other. So you need to take advantage. But for someone else, it could literally mean just waking up and having a successful day at work is successful to you, right? And so I encourage you to figure out what success looks like for you during this pandemic. Be okay with that. Stick to it. And not be wavered by, someone starting a business or someone taking the time to, I don't know, take naps every day at 12 noon. Like whatever it looks like for you, you have to take full advantage of that and not be upset if someone chooses to spend their time differently. Okay? Don't be upset. Some people are really angry out here. It's okay. Like if somebody's pushing their business on social media 15 times a day and you're tired of seeing their stories, then guess what? Either stop following them or maybe reshare the post and help them boost their business, because who knows, that could be their only source of income right now. And they're just trying to, fulfill a dream that maybe they've been holding on to for 10 years. Like, I just think we all need to start shifting our mindset and being okay with whatever we deem to be successful during this pandemic. Okay. I say this all the time, but I'm going to throw this in here again. Evaluate your surroundings. Check those social media pages that you're following. Your friendships, I encourage you to see, I would not weigh the importance, and that might be the wrong word, but I would not weigh a friendship on this pandemic either. Some people just don't have the energy to reach out or keep in contact. I would encourage you to say, I would say if you find value in a friendship, take advantage and you reach out and make sure that they're okay. Because some people just don't have the energy right now. But I would say there are moments in a friendship where you're just like, something's not right. Honor those feelings, but definitely check your friendships. Check your living space as well. This is the perfect time to go through your closets, go through your living room, go through your bedroom, start donating stuff to Goodwill, post some things on Poshmark and Mercari and Facebook Marketplace. Like now is the time for you to reevaluate your space. Make sure it's clean. Make sure you're leaving it open to change and being flexible to a new life, because things are going to change after this pandemic and you don't want to, necessarily be the exact same person, Maybe if you've been wanting to kind of change your aesthetic, I say go for it, right? Now's the time to kind of really tap into those feelings of things that you are interested in exploring. I would also tell you to evaluate what you're watching, reading, and listening to. So as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I was very insensitive to myself with what I was paying attention to, watching these COVID breaking news things and the news about Ahmaud Arbery. And then I was watching videos and all these things. Monitor what you're watching, monitor what you're reading, and monitor what you're listening to. It's super, super important. I downloaded the app Calm. So I'm working on meditating, trying to get that brain under control. But it's super important to do things like that. I've been reading way more, which has been awesome. I used to read books like all the time and then just kind of fell off as life happened. And it's been really good to kind of get back into reading books. So yes, evaluate your surroundings. Next, I say this all the time. I did an entire podcast episode about it. Please, if you don't listen to me now, if you didn't listen to me before, please listen to me now. Journal. Okay, get yourself a little notebook and just write your thoughts down. Even if it's just 2 sentences, write whatever you're feeling and get it out on paper. It helps make room in that brain of yours. Okay, so just journal. Another point, hydrate and mind your business. Okay, I say hydrate because I didn't even realize at one point I went 2 days without drinking water. I had been drinking tea and juice, but no water. And so hydrate. And I'm sure many of you are doing that. You're probably looking at me like I'm crazy, but there are some folks that don't drink water. Okay, so I'm talking to them right now. To all my dehydrated folks out there, we need to drink water. So I got one of those half-gallon water bottles, and I pay attention to the little time markers, and that's been helpful in ensuring that I'm constantly drinking water throughout the day. So do whatever you need to do, but make sure you're hydrated and minding your business. And I say minding your business because, as I alluded to a couple points back, be compassionate. You don't know what people are going through. It's so easy to sit at home and kind of flip through Instagram stories and flip through Facebook pages and say, oh God, why is this person doing this? And why are they doing that? And oh God, if I see this post one more time, and I get all of that. But at the same time, we just don't know what people are going through. So be compassionate. If you don't want to see it, if you're getting aggravated, and this goes to, evaluating your surroundings. You can mute people. Right? You can mute if it's something like triggering to you. But if it's somebody like promoting a business or doing whatever they're trying to do to kind of get through this pandemic, be compassionate. We don't know what they're going through. And I think we can all use a little bit of compassion nowadays. And I'm going to leave you with this. This is my final takeaway. And that is living and speaking your truth. It is absolutely liberating when you walk in your truth, when you speak your truth. Every time that your mouth opens up, you're not living a double life. So there's no extra energy being exuded to be anything other than yourself, because you can do that flawlessly. But being someone else takes so much energy. And right now we just don't have it to give. None of us. We're giving energy everywhere else, trying to get through this thing. So I encourage you to be liberated in living and speaking your truth. It's so important. It's so, so, so important. And the world has to understand that your voice is just as powerful as the next. You have value to give. And there's no need for you to ever feel like you have to prove anything to anybody, or that you have to have this feeling of validation. Never, ever, ever, ever forget the value that you bring just simply being you. Okay? Cool. So I did want to say a few things before I let you go, because I feel like I'm rambling now. I really hope something in this podcast episode touched you today. It was very transparent for me. Very vulnerable of me to share a few of these things that I have never shared with people before. So I want you to know that I'm okay. I am doing well. I just did what I needed to do and took the time that I needed to kind of work through that list of things. And guess what? I had Cheez-Its to get me through it. Because, I mean, what the hell? I got 4 boxes. So I snacked my way through getting my mind clear and doing what I need to do to kind of get back into an amazing space. So I'm well. So that's first. Second, I'm working on some new branding to really give the page and the podcast an uplifting look and a fresh look. So I did start an Instagram page for those of you who were following me before, and then it kind of disappeared, and then it popped up again, and now it's like empty. It's still the page. I'm just working through it. So if you feel inclined to follow, definitely follow me on Instagram, The Genuine Life Podcast. And then next week, we are going to have a very special guest, a dear friend of mine. Her name is Abina, and she is just such a gift and a beautiful light. And I am looking forward to sharing the episode with y'all next week. But be encouraged. You know, this podcast is not going anywhere. I am not going to stop recording episodes. But I did feel like I needed to come on here and just tell you why the episode did not air last week. And yeah, to let you know that sometimes the people who have the biggest smiles on their faces are struggling too. And so it's important for you to just check in with one another, right? Like a simple hello, even if it's a DM on Instagram. I understand also both sides of the coin. I know that there are times when you don't even have the energy to check up on anybody. I get that. But I encourage you, when you feel led to do so. Usually those feelings of like, oh gosh, I need to reach out to ABCD. Like, do that, because you're not getting those feelings out of nowhere. And sometimes usually the people that you're thinking of are the ones that need to hear from you. So I hope that you were doing well. Please, please, please take care of yourselves. Look out for the rebranded Instagram page. I'll be back next Monday with a new episode and a special guest. I hope you have a wonderful week. Thinking about you. If you need anything at all, you know where to find me. And yeah, I'll holler at you next week.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. Make sure you're following Jenn on Instagram at Genuine Life, and that's JENNUINE Life, to stay connected throughout the week. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Genuine Life podcast episodes. Until then, join us back here on Monday for a new episode. As always, beauties, remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and be genuine.